Look closely at the sheer violence of this impact. A solid cluster of metal is driving downward, rapidly compressing and fracturing an elastic surface well over 100 times every second. Millions of people subject themselves to this exact physical process every single year, yet almost none of them could tell you what is mechanically or biologically happening under their skin. Physiologically, a tattoo is an active injury. The body is sustaining thousands of microscopic, controlled puncture wounds delivered in rapid succession, which raises an immediate mechanical question. How exactly does this device convert raw electrical current into a motion precise enough to trap ink permanently inside a living, moving human organ? And more importantly, what happens after the machine is turned off? Recent medical literature reveals that the pigment does not sit statically where it was placed. It initiates a systemic reaction that spreads far beyond the original wound. We are going to audit the actual mechanics of tattooing, exploring the deep physiological toll of embedding heavy metals and industrial pigments into human tissue. The engineering challenge of any tattoo machine is surprisingly narrow. It must take a standard electrical input and force it into rapid, highly calibrated linear motion. A traditional coil machine achieves this using electromagnetism. Direct current flows through the dual coils, pulling a heavy armature bar downward to drive the needle. This specific action breaks the circuit, collapsing the magnetic field, allowing a spring to snap the assembly back and repeat the cycle. Alternatively, a rotary machine solves the exact same problem with less mechanical noise. It uses a continuously spinning electric motor and a mechanical cam to translate rotational energy into an identical up and down stroke. This relentless speed and force are necessary because human skin is highly elastic and incredibly resistant to puncture. The machine must cycle fast enough to breach the tissue cleanly rather than snagging or shredding it. Whether relying on complex electromagnetic switching or a simple rotary cam, the hardware executes a violent, highly engineered physical action fast enough to overpower human anatomy. A common misconception is that these machines operate like medical syringes, forcibly pumping fluid into the body under pressure. A tattoo needle is actually a completely solid piece of metal. The delivery mechanism relies entirely on capillary action. Pigment is drawn into microscopic gaps between solid needles, held by surface tension. As the machine drives downward, cohesive forces drag the droplet into the wound channel. No external pump is required. Getting the ink past the surface is only half the battle. The outer layer of human skin, the epidermis, is a defensive barrier that continuously sheds and completely regenerates every few weeks. To achieve permanence, the needles must bypass this shedding layer entirely and deposit the pigment exactly 0.5 millimeter to 2 millimeters deep, locking it into the stable collagen of the dermis below. The physical margin for error here is razor thin. Puncture too shallowly, and the ink sheds away with the dead skin in a matter of weeks. Drive the needles too deep, and you sever blood vessels, triggering severe scarring and forcing the ink to spread out into a permanent blowout. The manual application of a tattoo is a microscopic tightrope walk. It requires perfectly balancing fluid dynamics and driving force against the biological shedding cycles of the human body. Once that pigment successfully breaches the dermis, the body immediately recognizes it as a foreign contaminant and triggers a massive biological alarm. Specialized first responder immune cells, known as macrophages, swarm the puncture site. These large cells physically stretch over the invasive ink particles and swallow them whole. This mechanism is known as phagocytosis. It is the immune system's standard protocol for isolating hazardous debris and clearing it from the surrounding tissue. The irony of tattooing is that this immune response is exactly why the art persists. The trapped macrophages cannot break down the heavy metals and industrial pigments, so they remain locked in the dermis until they die. When a pigment-loaded macrophage finally expires, it ruptures and releases its payload back into the tissue, prompting a fresh macrophage to immediately swallow that exact same particle. The visible artwork on the skin relies on an active, decades-long cellular standoff. Your body is continuously fighting a microscopic war of attrition to remove the ink, and continuously failing to win. Recent medical literature reveals that this localized cellular standoff is far from perfectly contained. Researchers utilizing extreme-scale analytical tools like synchrotron facilities have successfully tracked microscopic fragments of pigment, specifically nanoparticle-sized titanium dioxide, escaping the dermal layer entirely. These submicroscopic escapees are highly mobile. They navigate outward through the lymphatic system and permanently accumulate inside the body's draining lymph nodes. This internal migration carries measurable physiological costs. Data published in 2025 demonstrates that trapped tattoo ink triggers sustained lymph node inflammation and significantly suppresses the immune system's ability to produce antibodies following a subsequent vaccination. Broad population studies of tattooed individuals have also shown statistical associations with an elevated incidence of lymphoma and skin cancers. While researchers caution that these are currently correlations rather than proven causal mechanisms, the data clearly maps an altered physiological baseline. This joins a growing list of established secondary reactions, ranging from severe allergic hypersensitivity that can develop decades after the initial procedure, to localized burning sensations during routine diagnostic MRI scans. The scientific consensus confirms that tattoo ink is an active biological agent that permanently alters local immune function. In this context, rigorous professional training and absolute clinical sterility are not merely industry preferences. They are the essential firewalls required to keep a lifelong physiological wager from turning into an acute medical failure.